Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay back there? Okay, thank you. So I call this meeting Tuesday, February the 21st, 2023, 7 p.m. To order and to acknowledge that we are on the territory of the Chehalis. The next order of business, I'm going to go through this myself this evening, is the introduction of late items. So I have a few late items, and I want to start off, and I normally wouldn't comment on a letter which is.
Mr. Mayor, the agenda has not been approved as of yet.
I will continue on, and I will.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, the agenda needs to be approved.
Thank you, Councillor Facio, or sorry, Councillor Vidal. I will continue on. First item I would like to discuss is something which I believe is vital to the best interest of the village of Harrison Hot Springs.
Mr. Mayor, a point of order has been called. If you don't want to carry out the point of order, Mr. Chair.
As I stated, a very important letter was distributed throughout.
Mr. Mayor, with respect,
There's a very important letter that was sent out,
Council,
and it was identified. Councillor Facio, if you continue, I will remove you from this meeting.
Mr. Mayor, the
Councillor Vidal, likewise, I will have you removed from this meeting if you.
challenge of
I will remove you from this meeting. This is my final warning.
Mr. Mayor,
Councillor Facio, I ask you to remove yourself from this meeting. Councillor Facio, you have been requested to remove yourself from this meeting.
as per the charter, you will.
Councillor Facio. Sir, if you choose not to leave, I can make that happen.
Mr. Mayor, point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Facio,
Mr. Mayor, one moment, please.
there is an issue on the table. Councillor Facio, you've been asked to remove yourself from this meeting.
that requires a resolution.
Councillor Vidal, you have been asked to leave this meeting.
That requires
Can I get some assistance, please? Councillor Facio. Councillor Vidal, you have been asked to leave the meeting.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, could you please let me speak?
You're out of order.
No,
You're out of order, sir. You're out of order. You're out of order, sir. I am following the agenda. You have two councillors who are not abiding by the rules of the chair. You have been asked to leave the meeting. I would expect you either apologize and or remove yourself from this meeting. Councillor Facio, you've been asked to remove yourself from this meeting. I remind you once again, Councillor Fazio, you're to leave the meeting.
For the sake of, for the sake,
Councillor Fazio, you are out of order. Please remove yourself from this meeting. I remind you, Councillor Fazio, for the final time, before I have to get the authorities to physically remove you. I would ask that you either apologize or remove yourself from this meeting.
thank you. For the sake of the meeting, I will apologize. And but I do not agree with what,
Thank you, Councillor Fazio. I accept your apology. Councillor Vidal,
For the sake of continuing the meeting, I offer my apology, Mr. Mayor.
thank you. Your apology is accepted. As I move on to the minutes of the meeting, and we are starting with the introduction of late items. This is a late item, and it's a very important late item. This is a letter that was distributed to residents by hand, apparently throughout the village, and it's called the Village Mall. I normally wouldn't comment on a letter which is anonymous, but this letter it may attack myself as a politician. I'm a politician, I get it. Free speech, people are allowed free speech. But this letter attacks staff members. When this attacks a staff member, specifically two staff members and a member of this public, then it's my responsibility to ensure that this type of behavior is stopped. I don't condone this type of behavior. When a member attacks personally by their staff member's name and by their job title, and makes allegations against these individuals, I would ask that individual, how would you feel if these allegations were made against you? How would these allegations, how would you feel? What do you think how these allegations affect the staff member's family? What about the staff member's friends? What about the people in the community? What do the community start to think about them when they hear comments which are absolutely inappropriate to be said? Our staff need to be protected, and I will protect our staff. There is also a member of the public which was put in the same situation, and that is also equally not acceptable. The behavior of this letter is I believe it's vital to the social well-being of this village. This village is divided on certain issues. But again, when staff members are talked about, that is wrong. I would like to add that not just this letter, I would also say that I am not on Facebook. I do not see Facebook, but there are people that do forward me snapshots of Facebook postings. And one of them that concerns me, and that is that this same letter was posted by an administrator of a website of this village. I don't know which website, or sorry, which Facebook group it is. I don't even know which groups we have. But for somebody to post something like that online, when it has comments against a politician, fair game, get it, no problem. Not that I like it, but again, when the staff are attacked verbally, or not, sorry, not verbally, when they are attacked and it affects their livelihood, then that is wrong. That should not have been posted. That individual, which I believe said it was an administrator of that account, should know better. I have no idea what future potential litigation that they're going to face. That's not my problem. But this behavior must stop. Next item.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, could you read the letter? Because I don't know what it is, just for clarity.
No, this letter is absolutely not intended to be read. It is absolutely disrespectful. If you wish a copy, I can get you a copy.
Thank you.
The next item, just on the weekend here, I received a official notification from members of council. I'm not going to read it, but I will say what it's about, and it's very disheartening. This is a letter from all members of this council here, and they are calling for a vote of non-confidence of the mayor. Part of this request is the request to actually have a meeting of council to discuss their concerns. It is a hearing that they request of the mayor. I have responded back to these councillors that I would be more than happy to attend a hearing, but I will not attend a hearing that is closed to the public. If council wants to make a concern of the mayor, do so in public. If you expect me to come into a meeting that's closed when it's already known what the intent of the 4 council members are, goes against every part of what, as council has put in their letter here, is called procedural fairness. Procedural fairness does not happen between closed doors. Procedural fairness happens in open doors. These are allegations against me. I want them in public, and I demand that they're in public. I'm insulted in this, and I will confirm it is signed by Councillor Facio, Councillor Vidal, Councillor Buckley, and Councillor Jackson. The non-confidence vote, which was advanced by the councillors I just named, is nothing more than a calculated ambush on the mayor's office and assault on my personal and professional standing. Their actions are the latest examples of playground politics at its worst. It's an embarrassment for the village to have 4 of our elected officials acting in this manner. Their actions create a toxic work environment for city staff, damage the reputation of the city, and have far-reaching impacts on all of us. These acts are retaliatory, vexatious, and vindictive. They continue to engage in retaliatory behavior that further degrades the reputation of our amazing village. Through this high level of harassment at the hands of certain council members, I remain committed to the well-being of our staff and our community, investing my time and attention to issues that matter to our taxpayers. I would note there was a council meeting, special council meeting that was called of last Wednesday. During that meeting, I had to call a point of order at least a dozen times at that point. Well, I had 2 council members that were attacking me with continuous insults, and that's Councillor Facio and Councillor Jackson. To that, I say that must stop. I will not attend another closed meeting.
Point of order, Your Mayor.
I will not attend another closed meeting. I will not attend another closed meeting until I receive a written apology from both of those council members. Next item.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
No, you may not. You may not. I'm moving on here. I have received correspondence from Mayor Pranger regarding the pool. in Agassiz. The District of Kent, the mayor, Ms. Pranger, is started the process of a petition. They're asking for participation and assistance in the village of Harrison Hot Springs to help them in a petition that they can present to members of Ottawa and the province, I believe, for additional fundings. So I would like to just put a motion on the table that we direct staff to assist the District of Kent in their petition for the pool in such a way that it would be placed at the front office for signatures and also placed on the village's website and Facebook page for anybody interested in signing that petition. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Buckley. Do I have discussion on that? Ready to call the question? I will call the question. All in favor? Councillor Buckley and the mayor in favor. All opposed? Opposed, motion fails. Councillor Facio, Councillor Jackson, and Councillor Vidal opposed. Next item. Excuse me. Bear with me. Under section 131 of the charter, the mayor may require council reconsideration of a matter, excuse me. I wish to reconsider a recommendation that was given by council from the January 26th and 27th, 2023 committee of the whole meeting. Specifically, the item I want to reconsider is the sanitary lift station retrofit. Sanitary lift station number 1, which is the one located, which is our main last lift station that pumps all of our sewage to the sewage treatment plant. The reason I bring this back for reconsideration is there was 2 options that were given to council. There was no recommendation. But the 2 recommendations, one was for 1.1 million and the other one was basically for 2.4 million. So there's a difference of $1.2 million. So $1.2 million is an awful lot of village money. There's no grant money for this. This is village money. It comes out of the village reserves. It comes out of taxpayers' money. Again, $1.2 million. When this was presented in the committee of the whole meeting, there were 2 people, and there was Councillor Buckley and myself, who have years of pumping experience, and there were a number of good questions that were placed again by Councillor Buckley and a few from myself. Basically, these are 2 pump stations. These are 2 options for a pump station. And the only difference being is the container that the pumps and the equipment sit in. Either you can call it the wet well, the container, the drum, whatever you want to call it. So Councillor Buckley and myself, we moved for the cheaper version to be carried out. There was an engineering report, and this was a professional engineering report, which was briefly just talked about, but I had an opportunity after this to do a little bit more detailed work into it. The engineering report does not make any recommendations either way. But the professional engineer says that the existing wet well that we have is repairable and can be rehabilitated and is included in this cost of 1.12 $2 million. Again, so now I start asking myself the question, so when two members of council believe that the station can be retrofitted, and three other council members who didn't ask a question during that period, who have no knowledge of the equipment, why they would approve a project at an additional $1.2 million of taxpayers' money, I have to ask myself, what happened? What am I missing? So as I dug into it a little bit further, I found out that this wet well, or this can, is going to be put in the middle of put at the end of the street area. So effectively, the blacktop, the road access will be where the new station actually is placed. If we keep with the same one, then that access, that road work is not touched whatsoever. That road work right now is where the buses park. And I started to look at it and I wonder, so again, why would we want to spend $1.2 million more? It just doesn't make sense. So I found out that, again, this new pump station is effectively going to be blocking that roadway, which also happens to be what I have been led to believe is access to a future development site, which is a laneway which is in behind the hotel property and the building adjacent to it. So this pump station may very well interfere with that future development proposal. What's interesting is actually who owns that land. There is well-known hatred between members of council and that individual. When that type of decision is hindered based on hatred and not in the best interest of the taxpayers, I'm concerned. That's why I bring that issue up to date. Again, $1.2 million. So I'm going to ask for reconsideration, and I will reread the recommendation that lift station number 1 be replaced as detailed in the sanitary lift station 1 replacement report dated January the 17th, 2023, with the assembled engineering team of Welder Engineering, LLP, Watanabe Engineering, and GeoWest Engineering at a value of up to $2.39 to $500 to be funded by the sanitary sewer DCCs and the sanitary sewer reserves. So I want to call the question on that of all in favor of that.
Just a question, Your Worship. Are you
This is-
indicating?
Go ahead.
If I read this correctly, in the last 2 or 3 sentences, are you saying that somebody on council has some interest in this pump or where it's going?
No,
Are you sure that's what you said?
that's not.
That's what I heard. I hope you're not trying to implicate anybody on this council, including myself. And to make the assumption that we don't know about these particular types of items and don't do our own research is very disingenuous of you.
I've called the question. There's no further discussion. There is no discussion. Councillor Buckley.
Just for clarity,
Councillor Buckley.
this is the most expensive option you're
This-
asking?
This is the most expensive option.
Okay,
This is the most expensive option, which is for close to $2.4 million. This is what was approved. This is what was carried, and it was opposed by yourself, Councillor Buckley, and myself. So I am asking again for reconsideration of this matter, and I am calling the question, all that in favor of the $2.4 million pump station.
Your Worship, I'd move that this matter be referred back to staff.
There is no discussion. I have called the question. The question is all in favor.
Your worship.
Counselor. I ask, calling the question, those opposed? Seeing no hands, that means the motion passes with the mayor opposed.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I think
Go
just
ahead.
for clarity, I'm not exactly sure what just happened, but without discussion, I feel that we should be able to discuss it as you and I were in favor of the cheaper option. I wish you would regress and let the counselors have their moment because this is a lot of money. And I do not think that discussion at this point would hurt anything. And it is over $1 million. And, you know, for the time it takes to discuss it, I think it would be in our interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Next item.
Just for clarity, Mr. Mayor, I was in favor of the cheaper option, but I did not understand where you were going with the first. When you read it out, it should probably read option 1 or option 2, option 1 being the most expensive, number 2 being the cheaper. Is that correct?
Number 2 is the most expensive.
Okay, then I would be in favor of option 1, which is the cheaper one. But I don't know that the way you explained it, it didn't come across clear to me. So I was not going to vote on something for $1 million without the clarity, and that's why I thought the discussion was better. So we can maybe have some discussion from the counselors that may have some interest in talking to our maintenance manager, so they could ask more questions before we put it to a vote.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. I would have loved to have had and opened it up for debate. But unfortunately, under the charter, all I can do is recall the actual motion for vote. So that was a recall of motion.
Could you ask then for another recall? And I would
I-
like to be listed as being in favor of the cheaper option.
Unfortunately, I can't recall a motion at the same meeting, but we can at the next meeting. Thank you. Next item. Mayor may require council reconsideration on the matter under section 131 of the charter. I have some concerns here on specifically the council remuneration and expense policy. And I will read it out to you. Bear with me. It was moved by Councillor Facio that staff update council remuneration expense policy 1.16 to increase remuneration for mayor and council by 30%. Increase of $10 per meal be provided, and allowance for cell phone usage be provided. A village issued laptop computer or an annual allowance of $1,000, excuse me, for conducting village business on personal computers, and the option to attend the FCM or UBCM conferences. The 30%, and I want to make sure that council members are aware, and I'm sure they are now, that council and mayor just received a cost of living increase 2 weeks before this, which they probably wouldn't have known until they actually have seen what their last pay stub. But that cost of living increase was, I believe it was 6.9%. So the 6.9%, this motion was asking for an additional 30%. There's an additional $1,000 for laptop computers. The option of attending the FCM and the UBCM conferences, which I believe is in Toronto this year, or I don't know if it's always in Toronto. Those are huge costs to the village here. It could easily cost $5,000 for each one of us to attend. That's another, could be potential now of $20,000 just in conferences for this village. Just that alone is over a 1% tax increase every year just for council to attend these other meetings. I think that there's a few other things that need to be brought to the attention. So again, so when you total all these up, they total up at over a 40% increase for council. And something that I want to make sure that council are aware of is, and to believe, I believe that it was the QP collective agreement, which expired in December of 2021. So QP members have been working here in the village here for over a year and 4 months or so without a collective agreement. And I was also just made aware that there was a motion put out from the previous councillors to do a review of the senior staff level salaries. So that there is also under review right now. So council now are awarding themselves over a 40% increase while we go into agreements, into contractual agreements again with QP and with our senior staff. I think it sets a bad example going into a process of dealing with the remuneration of the other staff members. So that being said, I will ask, I will repeat that same motion, and I will ask for a revote on that, just to ensure that all council members are still in the same position. So what was moved by Councillor Facio is again, staff update the council remuneration and expense policy 1.16 to increase remuneration for mayor and council by 30%, increase $10 per meal to be provided, and an allowance for cell phone usage be provided, a village issued laptop, or an annual allowance of $1,000 for conducting village business on personal computers, and the option to attend the FCM and the UBCM conferences. I will call the question. All in favor?
What are you voting on?
You're voting on what I just read.
No, we voted on that.
I am recalling
No, sir, you've done that.
Councillor
No, second,
Councillor Jackson, you're out of order.
we still have a
Councillor
democracy in
Jackson.
Canada.
Councillor
Mr. Mayor.
Jackson, you're out of order.
You,
This is a recall and a vote. If you choose not to put your hands up and vote for it or against it, it is a vote for it. This is, I called the question. I said, all in favor. Favor of what I just read out, that staff update the council remuneration policy to increase the mayor and council by 30%. Increase the $10 per, you're interrupting me, Councillor. I'm
Mr. Mayor,
speaking.
we sent
I'm
that back
speaking.
we sent that back to staff for a report. And you know that. You were at the council meeting. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to.
Councillor Jackson, again, Councillor Jackson, you're out of order.
I have the right to speak.
Councillor Jackson, there is no discussion on the matter. It's a recall of a vote. There's a recall for a vote. I have asked all in favor. This is the final time. I see all in favor. Okay. Motion passes, opposed by myself.
Mr. Mayor, if I could,
Go ahead, Councillor.
direct a question through you to our Chief Financial Officer. My last term when I was here, we had a $5,000 allotment for expenses, and that was to cover the UBCM and any other things we attended. Is that still in place? For a $5,000 total per year?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Buckley. The budgeted item, if you can bear with me for one.
Absolutely. I know.
moment.
I wasn't expecting to ask the question either.
The budget line items are a little muddy, so perhaps we can take it offline. I don't have that information right in front of me.
Okay, thank you. But it is somewhere in that neighborhood.
If
We can't exceed and just go everywhere that we want in the countryside and just send it in for So there is a ceiling on the amount that we can spend.
Correct. Council
Okay.
must stay within the budgeted allotment.
Right. Thank you very much.
Okay, I will move on to the next order of business, which is the approval of the agenda.
If I might,
This-
to the agenda items under new business before the agenda is approved. Number one is that we'll be making a motion to amend our procedural bylaw. Number two, I'll be making a motion for correspondence to the inspector of municipalities. And number three, a motion to submit a resolution to the Lower Mainland Local Government Association for consideration during the May conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vidal. I ask for approval of the agenda as amended. Moved by Councillor Vidal, second by Councillor Buckley. All in favor? Motion passes. Next order of business is the adoption of council minutes. That the regular council meeting minutes of January the 16th, 2023 be adopted. The mover.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Facio, seconded by Councillor Buckley. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, ready to call the question. All in favor? Passes unanimously. Item B, that the committee of the whole minutes of January 26th and 27th, 2023 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Buckley, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Errors or omissions? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Passes unanimously. Next order of business is business arising from the minutes. Seeing none, I will move on to the consent agenda. Mover for receipt of the consent agenda. Moved by Councillor Facio, seconded by Councillor Vidal. Any discussion? Ready to call the question? All in favor? Councillor Jackson opposed? No, so passes unanimously. Next item of business, our delegation. I apologize for the delay. And I also apologize for canceling of the last council meeting, of which I believe you were all ready and anxious to come here and attend. But thank you again here for being here tonight. If I can ask you to come up to the podium. So Sergeant Sergeant and Inspector Darren Pankratz from the RCMP.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you, Your Worship, council members, Village of Hot Spring, Harrison Hot Springs staff, and of course, the residents of Harrison Hot Springs who have turned out in more numbers than we've had in past years. So this is great to see. Thank you for coming tonight. The purpose of me being here tonight is the annual Harrison Hot Springs policing report. So it's just the highlight of the last year in policing specific to Harrison Hot Springs. Before I get started, you'll note the fancy emblem up on the screen there. It is a big year for the RCMP this year. We're celebrating our 150th anniversary. So we'll be doing things throughout the year to celebrate that and promote it. All right, so just a recap of the Agassiz detachment. We have 15 total members, 6 municipal and 9 provincial. That 9 was boosted up from 8 last year, thanks to the province adding another body. We have 2 current vacancies, and we had 2 members transfer in from the training facility in Regina this past year. Like everywhere in the Lower Mainland and province, we are struggling to fill those vacancies that we have just due to shortages of resources, which is not just hitting us, but also every other sector in the workforce. Here is a comparison of the calls for service in the Agassiz jurisdiction. So 39% of the calls for service occur within the District of Kent area, 18 within the village of Harrison Hot Springs, and that's consistent with previous years. A lot of these numbers haven't changed. 19% of those calls are POPCOM, 21% in our local Indigenous communities, and a small 3% in the outlying rural areas. And so just to recap the previous year, I've actually done a 5-year comparison just to show the numbers. As far as Harrison Hot Springs is concerned, they are trending in the right direction. You'll see we're down. We only had 468 calls for service last year, compared to 578 the year before and 550. So that's down about 20%, which to me is a good thing. That goes for priority 1 calls, which are emergency calls, your 911 calls, your hurry up and get here fast calls. We're experiencing less of those as well. Crimes against persons, it's about consistent with previous years, and those are your assaults, uttering threats, domestic violence, sexual offenses. And then property crime is always a big topic here in Harrison, and you'll see we only had 66 reported incidents of property crime, which is down 21% from the previous year, which again is great. Just a little bit on violent crime. Again, you'll see those numbers are very low. To have 30 violence-related offenses throughout a whole year speaks to the overwhelming safety of the community. That is, an average of less than 3 calls per month regarding violence. And I will say, the majority of those calls are to residents of Harrison. A lot of the tourists, a lot of the people that come to stay in our hotels and resorts often are the ones that engage in these types of behaviors. And domestic violence is always another big topic. It remained consistent with previous years, except for last year was up quite high, and then this year is one of our lowest in the last couple of years. So again, from my personal perspective, as far as crime goes, whether it's violence related or property crime, Harrison is doing pretty well. And here's just another further breakdown of the property crime. Again, this is everything that's reported. The different types of break and enters, the theft from vehicles, the auto thefts, bike thefts, and mischiefs. You'll see the column on the right, which represents last year's calls for service. Every one of those, with the exception of theft from motor vehicles, is down from the previous year. And theft from motor vehicles is only up by 1. Some of our crime trends. Number of calls for service has decreased in Harrison Hot Springs. One of the things we saw over the last year that's really come on our radar, and it's been in the media quite a bit, is the theft of catalytic converters. We actually just had one today reported in Harrison. So nowhere seems to be immune from this. It seems to be that people from outside the area come here, take these or other things, and then leave. I just wanted to highlight, so out of that 400 and some calls for service that we had, 144 of those calls for service were related to resorts, hotels, or other commercial accommodations. And of course, the majority of those being during the summer. The other issue we have, and I just touched on it briefly, is that the offenders we have coming here, they're from other jurisdictions. They're from Mission, they're from Chilliwack, they're from Surrey, they're from Vancouver. They come through here and then carry on. And that makes it challenging to do a lot of enforcement other than the patrols that we are able to do. Again, I'll say the majority of people that end up paying a visit to our detachment are not local residents. Another issue that's usually a hot topic is traffic. We have seen our Constable Scarecrow out and about, especially in the school zone in front of the elementary school. We're hoping to get Speed Watch out this year. We have a fair number of people trained within Harrison to do that. Members just got e-ticketing, which is a faster, more efficient means of handing out tickets. No more handwriting them out. We can just fill them out through the computer, print them off, and we're off. So we're able to hand out more as that goes. And of course, we're working with the school, the principal there, to make sure that we're in the school zones. Any complaints we receive from the public, we will target those areas. And we're also looking at targeting unsafe vehicles, making sure that they meet the requirements of being roadworthy. So this is a new topic for all of us. As of the end of last month, the decriminalization of drugs is here. And I want to start by saying it's decriminalization, not legalization. The province requested an exemption under the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act. The exemption decriminalized the simple possession of small amounts of controlled substances for personal use. The initial exemption took effect on January 31st. They see it as a trial period for 3 years, and we'll kind of assess how things work. This exemption was granted to support the province in implementing its comprehensive public health response to the overdose crisis. Under this exemption, adults over the age of 18 within the province of BC will not be arrested or charged for the simple possession of 2.5 grams or less of illegal drugs. This includes opioids, so heroin, morphine, fentanyl, cocaine, which includes crack, methamphetamine, and ecstasy. I will stress that the production and selling of these drugs is still illegal. And just to touch on somebody being arrested or charged, just over the last few years, there hasn't been a lot of enforcement in that. So from our perspective, there's not a lot of change in regards to the amount of people we arrest because they have a small amount of drugs on them. It's simply that in the past few years, Crown wouldn't entertain a small charging on a small amount of drugs. There's a few places you cannot possess drugs regardless of the exemption. Airports, childcare facilities, any school from K to 12, or in a vehicle or vessel operated by a minor. If you're an adult operating a vessel or a vehicle, it cannot be easily accessible, so not within arm's reach, much like they do with alcohol. The important part to remember is that this does not cover parks, playgrounds, beaches, or public spaces. And for those that have been following the news, Campbell River, the municipality of Campbell River implemented their own bylaw as a means of trying to restrict the use of drugs in public places. That has since been challenged, and we'll see what happens through that court process. But as it stands now, we may see an increase in drug use potentially in the Harrison area, which is not a good thing. So some policing updates, seasonal policing. We are again looking, trying to manage and balance our resources with what we're able to provide during the summer months from May till September. My commitment to Harrison is much like last year, that any long weekend, we will ensure we have extra resources here. In addition, now that the events are coming back, like Sasquatch Days, the Dragon Boat races, you'll have increased police visibility for those events as well. One thing of note to your worship, council, and the residents of Harrison is the UFERD RCMP, which Agassiz is part of, are in the midst of a strategic planning exercise. Basically, what we are doing is seeking the public's input on helping us develop what our strategic priorities as far as policing go are going to be for the next 3 years. So part of that will be an online survey where anybody can provide feedback to during that survey. And then we will also be hosting a kind of open house town hall meeting in this building on May 24th, I believe. I'll confirm that, but I think it's May 24th. That's a Wednesday, and that'll be open again to the public to come by and have a chat. And again, it's a great opportunity. It only comes around every 3 or 4 years for people to provide their input and give us some feedback on how we can do things better, especially when it's pertaining to Harrison. The auxiliary program, it was set aside for many years. It's slowly making its way back with a different format. So you'll expect to see a lot more recruiting going on in that regard. I believe Harrison in the past had a couple that were part of the Agassiz auxiliaries. Body worn cameras, they are coming. They are in the test phase, early stages of the test phase. So it's probably at least a year, maybe 2 before I'm standing up here before you with one on. But it is coming. So I see it as a good thing. And I think you'll see every police force eventually have those. And then last but not least, we're finding as police, one of the challenges is trying to stay out in the public versus the increased requirements for disclosure. Crown is asking for more information in different formats. We get disclosure requests from ICBC, from other government agencies, which requires members to spend more time in the office doing administrative tasks. So one of the things we're looking at doing is boosting our support staff to try and ensure that we keep people out, the members out on the streets. Mental health. This is always a big issue for us. So we had 193 mental health related calls for service in 2022. That's not Harrison specific, that's our whole policing area. We had 177 in 2021 and 219 in 2020. These types of calls are typically check well-beings, persons at risk to themselves or others, drug-induced psychosis or other mental health crisis. Approximately 50 out of the 193 calls require members to apprehend the individual under the Mental Health Act and then transport them to the hospital in Chilliwack. The result of this is that through travel time and the amount of time spent waiting at the hospital for the doctor to see them, we lose at least 100 hours annually of members tied up doing this and being outside our jurisdiction, unable to respond to calls. Some of our local highlights. In the late summer, early fall, we had the Harrison Lake Rescue. A vehicle went into Harrison Lake off Rockwell Drive. Vehicle was submerged for approximately 30 minutes. One of our Agassiz RCMP off-duty members was assisted by locals, jumped in the water and managed to pull him out, and he's survived. So great news. Early in 2022, we had a drug trafficking and firearms investigation. 2 shotguns, ammunition, and a significant amount of methamphetamine and fentanyl were located at a historically problematic residence on Chestnut Ave. We are in the works of trying to ensure that residence never becomes a problem again, and are sending it to civil forfeiture. And then Agassiz members were recognized. So in November of 2022, the Upper Fraser Valley Regional District Officer in Charge Awards, 6 of the Agassiz members, so almost half of our detachment, were recognized for excellence and valor and performance, which I mean, I can't say enough about the team I have there. And so just some of the things that we're committed to do to ensure that the communities are safe and we're seen as positives in the community. Just our increased patrols and presence, educating the community through crime prevention, increased local media presence. You'll probably see and have probably noticed that through the Agassiz Harrison Observer, there's quite a few articles now that reference the Agassiz RCMP, and that's just one, we're trying to highlight the work we're doing, but we're also trying to get messaging out to the public about crime trends, just safety awareness, anything that we can do to promote that within the public. The paper is a big supporter of us for that. We're working with the Indigenous communities on proactive initiatives. We've, as of September of last year, we implemented the Kent Harrison situation table. And Councillor Vidal was a big part of supporting that. Of course, we have our area focused seasonal policing. Last year, our members took over 100 guns off the streets through different investigations and traffic stops. We're working to make Harrison Hot Springs a less desirable place for criminals and obviously more desirable for the people that live there. And then, as always, you know, we couldn't be more appreciative of the ongoing support from our municipal governments and of course our community members that, you know, when we're out doing our beach patrol, that come up and talk to us and thank us for what we do. It's there's a lot to be said for that. So we truly appreciate that. And just some of the other things we've done in the past year as far as presence in the community. We have our annual Stuff the Cruiser event, which raises donations and funds for the food bank, which all the communities benefit from. We were there at Sasquatch Days, Remembrance Day, Canada Day ceremonies, seasonal visibility. One of our members participated in the Cops for Cancer, which raised, she personally raised over $6,500 for supporting research into cancers that affect children. Coffee with a Cop, we're starting that up again, I think as early as maybe next week. And then again, we're looking to promote our 150 year anniversary. So throughout the summer, throughout the year, we'll be giving out stickers and tattoos to everybody as we do our beach patrols and all that. Just before I open it up to questions for Mayor and Council, I believe Inspector Pankratz just wants to say a few words.
Thank you, Mike, and good evening, Your Worship and Council and citizens of Harrison Hot Springs. First and foremost, I want to thank Mike. He does a phenomenal job in providing leadership to the Agassiz CPO. The one thing he neglected to highlight as well is that he also provided leadership to the Hope CPO as a bridge while that position was vacant. So his leadership not only spanned through Agassiz and through this area, but then also covered for part of 2022, covered over into Hope as well. So took on the extra responsibility and does a phenomenal job. His team is very appreciative of him, as am I. And let me tell you, there are not a lot of people fighting to get out of the Agassiz CPO because of Mike's leadership. So for that, I'm grateful. The one thing I did want to highlight is I understand that there was a letter sent out after the UBCM dated January 9th. And I just wanted to ensure your worship and council that you'd had an opportunity to see that letter. It was in response to some of the issues that came up at the UBCM in regards to some seasonal policing challenges. So I wanted just to ensure that that was something that you had seen. If not, I can certainly ensure another copy gets to you. But it was just a follow-up response to some of those issues. And I wanted to give you an opportunity if there were any concerns or questions to let me know.
Thank you, Inspector. I don't think I've seen a copy of the responses from when we met at UBCM. I certainly would appreciate a copy. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Councillor Pat. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Inspector. Thank you, Mike. I have to, as always, compliment our RCMP detachment. Being a resident here for many years, longer than most people who are sitting here, that the RCMP, above all, done a wonderful job for our community, especially in the summer months when we're so busy. Here, they do an outstanding job. Sometimes they don't get thanked enough for what they do, but I'm always very appreciative. I believe the letter, Inspector, is in regards to our visit to UBCM last year, where myself, as the Mayor and Council, met with the RCMP regarding resources, both on the water and on the land for our RCMP detachments. I believe that's what the letter was about. And we keep lobbying as much as we can. Previously, a few years back, we did lobby in regards to getting more manpower, and I believe you managed to get maybe one sergeant, or maybe two. But I think you got one out of it. You got one out of it, so it was worth the trip. But again, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Buckley.
Thank you. John Buckley, Councillor. Question about when they say it's not legal to possess or it's not illegal to possess on parks and school grounds and that sort of thing. Is that something that we could maybe work together and take to UBCM and see if we can't lobby it from that? Do you think that would help at all? Because I definitely would be willing to spearhead that one. That one just made no sense to me whatsoever.
So part of it is if Campbell River is successful with upholding their current bylaws, that will go a long way, because then Harrison could look at implementing their own specific to obviously like the beach area. And that is something we'd be more than happy to work with Mayor and Council with. The other, I mean, it's taken a lot of scrutiny because there's a huge fine associated with it, and that's what people are looking at. I mean, from my perspective, it's not so much about the fine as it is a tool for bylaw or for the police to say, you know what, you can't do that here, take it somewhere else, right? We're just trying to remove it from where kids are playing, from where families are enjoying their Saturday afternoon, right? So the other side is maybe getting a little creative with current bylaws, such as, you know, there's a no smoking bylaw on the beach that could carry over to and include things like, you know, smoking crack, smoking meth, smoking is smoking, right? So that's, but we can certainly have those discussions as to what the best course of action would be.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all you do for us. It's much appreciated.
Thank you.
I don't think you can hear that enough, so thank you.
I can just add one piece to that question from, I was recently last week at the BC Association of Chiefs of Police Conference. And the theme out of that is there's a number of different communities that are all with the same mindset of wondering, how do we best tackle that? The message to across the board from the province is that they have made drug use as a personal medical issue. So what they're trying to do, the theme of it is that they're taking it out of criminality and putting it into the medical world. So the challenge then is that the province is going to adamantly oppose anything that tends to recriminalize something that they're trying to make medical. So that's the theme. That's not from us. That's the theme coming out of the provincial government. And that's kind of the motion behind what's led us down this decriminalization road. So that's essentially the moral of this, is that the province is against recriminalizing something that they've now decriminalized, if that tends to make sense. But the no smoking, those kinds of things, I think are highly advantageous, particularly for public space. Anywhere that you would say no smoking, you could easily, and that should and would include e-cigarettes, vaping, marijuana, those kinds of things would all fall very comfortably under that. And that is not a recriminalization, that is simply a municipal bylaw around the health and welfare of other people, addressing secondhand smoke issues, those kinds of health issues. So that is something that we have seen successfully go through in other communities, the expansion of those non-smoking bylaws.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson, do you have any question?
I don't have, excuse me, I don't have a question. I just want to thank you very much for doing a very, very difficult job under very trying circumstances. And I do hope at some time the Crown gets in line for what you're doing, so it makes it easier for you, so you don't have to continue to go after the same people all the time. I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Councillor Vidal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions. The decriminalization, that smaller amounts that the province now views as more of a health issue. If you do come across someone who is in possession of a, 2.5 grams, do you offer to them any referrals for support services or, yeah, could you elaborate on that? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So part of the decriminalization is there's a the RCMP or police in general are now being tasked with, because we have the highest probability of interaction with a lot of these individuals that are using these drugs. We have been given resource cards. These things are basically tear-proof, they're waterproof. So we give them out. It's got all the resource contacts specific to this area, and then of course more. So the goal again is, if somebody wants help, they just have to contact one of the numbers or get a hold of somebody that's on that card. But yes, that's a very good point.
Good, thank you. And one other question is, in your presentation, you indicated that you're involved with some proactive initiatives with Indigenous communities. I'm just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on what those initiatives involve. Thank you.
Yeah, so there's a few things. One is the situation table that you're familiar with, where we've basically brought together all the partner agencies and resources within the Kent Harrison area to sit down and discuss high-risk clients. We have one of the highest representations of Indigenous communities within that table, which is significant given that we're the smallest table when you compare us to Surrey and other big cities that have the same type of table. We have basically established working groups with both on the justice side and health side within our three largest Indigenous communities, so Sham, Stehelis, and Seabird, with kind of the same principle where we're working together to address issues within those specific communities with the hopes of, minimizing police interaction and assisting people.
Terrific, thank you. And I'll also add my gratitude to everyone for and our RCMP detachment who I love walking down on the beach, especially on the weekends in the summer. And I always make an effort to stop and thank them very much. So thank you for your presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes. Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I think that you have broken it down now. You separated Agassiz out of the combination statistics. So it's nice to see the statistics which are specific just to the village of Harrison here. I think that's helpful. And I've been trying to pass those around to council members, and it's nice to receive those on a monthly basis. And again, thank you very much for your service.
Thank you, Your Worship. And again, thank you, council.
Good night. Just moving on to the next order of business, which is correspondence. Item A, email dated February the 7th, 2023 from the Fraser Valley Regional District, read the draft regional growth strategy. Do we want to do each one of these letters, or do we want to just a motion to receipt for all
All
three?
received together, Mr. Mayor.
You want to do them all together? Yeah, let's do them all together. So item B, which is a letter dated February 13th from Harrison Agassiz Chamber of Commerce, read the 2023 BC Chamber of Commerce Week. And item 3, which is a letter dated February 14th, 2023 from the BC Ombudsperson, read the Ombudsperson's role in working with public and local governments. A motion to receive.
So, Mr. Mayor.
Moved by Councillor Facio, second by Councillor Jackson. Call the question, all in favor? Passes unanimously. Next item of business is number 9, business arising from the correspondence. Is there any business arising from the correspondence, councillors? Councillor Jackson, is your mic on, or did you have a question or no? No, I just want to make sure. Okay, seeing nothing, no business. Moving on to item 10 is the reports of councillors, committees, committee of the whole, and commissions. So, Councillor Jackson, would you like to start?
Your worship, well, actually, it's been very, very busy. I attended the LGLA in Richmond on the 8th, 9th, and 10th. It was extremely interesting. I did get updated on many, many things. We were busy for 3 days from early in the morning to evening. But the one thing that I really enjoyed the most was being around positive people, positive thinkers. It was so nice to be in that environment and get revitalized with a lot of great discussion and thoughts. I then attended the Fraser Valley Library Retreat on the 16th, looking at the first blush for the budget for 2023. A lot of very interesting things going on with the library. We must remember it's the biggest library system in British Columbia with 25 branches and 40 librarians. It was a very good time. Looking forward to more meetings with them. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley.
Thank you. I also attended the LMLGA Elected Officials Seminar Series in Richmond. It was a very good conference. There was a good abundance, I'll call it, of keynote speakers. Some of the subjects that were covered that were very important to me was, I'll quickly go through a couple here, was roles and responsibility of the functioning council. We had municipal finance, local government, meeting procedures, asset managements, local government law from Lidstone and Company, which was the overview of obligations for local government, etc., local government planning. And that's about it for that one. On February the 16th, I took part in the Healthy Community meeting. Various topics were discussed. What was very, I guess, disturbing but not surprising was they were talking a lot about the shortage of doctors and nurses. Approximately 400 people in Agassiz, or there's a 400-person waiting list in Agassiz to have a doctor. They just don't have one, period, or a nurse practitioner. And they don't know when that's going to be able to, without hiring people, and they just can't seem to hire them. And they also discussed on how to help seniors stay in their homes longer, because it doesn't seem to be the answer to put them all, I guess, in homes, for lack of a better way. Assisted living, if they can stay in their own home as long as possible, if some of the neighbors can chip in and maybe mow a lawn for them or shovel their sidewalks or that sort of stuff, and just go see them, because not everybody has two people living in that house. So that was discussed as well. And they also talked about feeding those that need help with being able to eat proper food. And they're looking for volunteers to do that. Anything that anybody could do, if you get a hold of me, I can put you in the right direction. But it's just a lot of people do not have the right dietary consumption. And they're just out there basically eating out of a can or something like that. And then they end up with medical issues and there's no doctors. And so kind of a catch-22. But anyway, it was a very good meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillor Vidal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. January 18th, I attended a meeting of the Kent Harrison Joint Emergency Program. And on January 24th, I attended the Community Futures North Fraser Board meeting. January 26th, I attended the Let's Mock Community to Community Forum. And on February 1st, I attended Citizens Advisory Committee meeting at the Mountain Institution, and just want to let everyone know that I have been fingerprinted. Oh, I'm almost a little bit leery to find out what comes back, but and on February 9th and 10th, I also attended the Lower Mainland Leadership Academy Conference in Richmond. And again, it was a wonderful conference, and I won't elaborate any more on it. It seems that Councillor Jackson and Councillor Buckley have provided the highlights. On February 18th, I wanted to just acknowledge that I attended the Follow Your Heart concert at the Memorial Hall. This event was organized by our local musical ambassador, Todd Richard, with the efforts of Tourism Harrison. It was a tremendous sold out event, which raised, I believe, over $5,000 for a variety children's charities. And I wanted also a special shout out to our firefighters who so generously donated $1,000 towards the cause. Just wanted to say I'm so very proud of how our community came together for such a worthy cause. And I have heard rumors that it's going to be repeated again next year. And one final note, Mr. Mayor, is that I do want to take the time to wish Madeline McDonald a very happy retirement. Madeline served the village as our CAO for 7 years, bringing tremendous expertise and value to our resident and business communities. As a counselor, she was always so readily available to myself, and she helped steer Harrison through the unprecedented outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. I do wish Madeline and her husband the very best as they start their next exciting chapter. And that's my report.
Thank you, Councillor Bedell. But Councillor, I have a question for you. I've had a few people that have been asking me if we have any update on the evacuation route with regard to the Joint Emergency Commission.
What I can respond to that, Mr. Mayor, is that I believe it was 2.5 years ago when this council worked with District of Kent, hired a consultant to study what the best route would be for a second evacuation route. We accepted that contractor or consultant's recommendation. And from there, it goes to the province of BC. And it's up to them to make the final decision. I'm not sure if everyone is aware, but that proposed route goes through the perimeter of Sasquatch Park and comes out up around Ruby Creek. So the Emergency Planning Committee is continually advocating and asking for updates from the province, but unfortunately, I don't have an update for you as of now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bedell. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Buckley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to add a little bit to Councillor Vidal's talking about the emergency route. There seems to be a lot of rumors out there that this council is not doing anything about this route. And I would just like to tell everyone out there that when I was last on council, we did go to see the ministers of the government at the time. And basically what the problem is that they do not want to allow us to cut across the corner of a Class A provincial park. They will not give us an easement. They would like to take it out of the park, but it would be precedent setting. So they do not want to do that. And this has been going on for 20 years. We keep coming back and we say, this is all we want. We don't want the park. We just want access across in the case of an emergency. And then they say, okay, we're thinking about it. Thank you very much, and dismiss us. So it's not this council or past councils that aren't doing anything about it. We have tried. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Bedell.
Thank you for that, Councillor Buckley. I also, based on that consultant's report, and there are other sort of like considerations to take in addition to the difficulty with the perimeter of the park, and that is it does involve consultation with First Nations, and it also does involve some negotiations with some parcels of private property. So that's the latest update I've gotten, but I do appreciate your comments. You know, it's not something that has been forgotten, and in spite of the concerns that have been raised lately by your residents. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Just one question just for myself. Have we, if it seems to be the issue of it going through the park, of which I actually support, that it should not go through the park, have we looked at another option, or are we just sitting waiting, hoping that they're going to change their mind? Councillor Vidal?
That was the option that was approved by Kent and Harrison Council as the most appropriate route. We're not even, until we even get approval with that from the province, we can't even look at moving ahead with any costing or maintaining it, or I wish I had a little bit better for you, Mr. Mayor, but unfortunately it's in the hands of the province. Thank you.
Just one further question to that, Councillor. But can we be looking at an alternate route so that we're not, the park issue is not on the table? Was there?
It's not that the park issue isn't on the table. I do believe that there are kind of alternates to that, whether we could, or whether it's been proposed that it would be just run around the perimeter of the park, rather than actually, having to actually move into the park. I still believe in it, and at the time, I think Councillor Facio was involved in that discussions with the consultant, and I still do believe that that's the most viable route. There is part of that. There is still an old existing logging road that obviously would need repair and whatever. So, like I said, I wish I could provide you with more, but I can't at the moment. Thank you.
Just one last question, Counselor. So does it make sense to bring up and revisit within the, I guess it's the Joint Emergency Committee that's actually dealing with the evacuation route? Does it make sense now to revisit that and to look at other possibilities? Now, I believe that they've got a new coordinator, I believe, that was just been hired or has been on board. Should we be looking at just reviewing to see what that option, if that still is in alignment with where we want to?
If you're asking for a bit of my opinion on it, Mr. Mayor, I would say no, that I still do think that the route that is proposed is the most viable.
Would council be interested in sending a request to the Joint Emergency Commission to look at and reopen this the present application that's at the province, which seems to be being held up, to look at different alternate route, and I think it could be beneficial just to have a new set of ears in this project, and with the new coordinator that's on board there, that they revisit this and look to see if we need to re-kickstart this program. Councillor.
Thank you. I would be in favor of that.
Okay, council, just generally here, do we need just a general consent? Does council support that? Councillor Facio, are you gonna?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would you like me to give you a little bit more background on this?
I don't really have any background on it, but it's,
Give you a little bit more background?
I'm sorry,
Would you like me to give you a little bit more background on the process?
I would like to find out, yes, why,
Yeah.
where it's stalled, and if
Yeah,
we
well,
look.
what happened here was we've been dealing with this for 23 different meetings or a district of Kent. And the first route was Hicks Lake. And there was a problem then of going over the bluff and into Camp Road, and it was the quickest, easiest, and there was a road that just needed some minor upgrades and a few ditches to be filled in, because I was the manager of the forest in Chilliwack. Yes, he took a ride there on his motorbike and reported back to me to say it's very feasible, probably maybe a couple of $100,000 would do it. After that, they switched to Mahood Creek and the Class C park there, which is about 800 meters, that was used as a road. And of course, you got the bridge, Mahood Bridge, which it is moved and then put back. So that was another problem. And Laurie Thronis, the MLA of the day, said it was a simple order in council that could be done and passed, but that was stalled. We had the environment people come to the emergency planning sessions. The previous coordinator applied for a grant for a consultant, which was carried out. And I believe now it's in the process of the province and the other surrounding owners in regards to using that park. It would only be for an emergency. There would be a gate there. It wouldn't be for recreational travel coming from Hope to come to Harrison. Wouldn't be able to do it. Be purely, then of course, the other issue, of course, is the time of the year. And how is the road, how is that area of the park going to be serviced for snow removal and all that? So it's been a complex discussion. It's ongoing. All councils that have served with myself have done an excellent job of lobbying with the provincial government and with speaking with our local mayors and the emergency program. So it's an ongoing discussion. I think our representative on the emergency planning should by all means give the thoughts of this council moving forward in respect where are we with the province and where when is something going to be done. So it's at one point it was between $400,000 and $600,000 to do a bit of a cleanup job to get that Hood Creek and the area cleaned up for traffic to go through. At one time, we did have a big delegation from the hikers in regards to that area, which we were dead against it. But when they realized it was just going to be an emergency route with a gate, wouldn't be open for permanent lug-in traffic, then things changed. But that's if that's an update to help you at all. But I think that any suggestion from councils to the emergency committee would be great to keep things moving.
Thank you, Councillor Facio, for that update. Yeah, it's important to keep it moving, and I think it would be nice to Councillor Vidal, if you can bring it up at the next joint emergency committee meeting there, and just try to find out where we are with it and report back to council. Is that a general consent of councillors? Yes, yes.
Mr. Mayor, I think if the village also wanted to take a time to forward a letter, also requesting that to the committee, I can request that it be put on the agenda for a discussion at the next meeting.
Under the circumstances of where we are right now, could I suggest that just we start with a verbal request at your next meeting?
I could certainly do that.
Thank you,
If that's the wish of council, taking the time to write a letter does hold a little bit more weight, Mr. Mayor, and that way I could ensure that it was on the agenda.
Councillor Buckley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Vital. I also, if you're gonna get our letter here, I wondered if you could include maybe a risk assessment if one has been done or hasn't been done. In my previous life, I was involved with risk assessments, and for the general public that don't know, that is the probability that something would happen. And what in fact would it take to make that happen? And how often do you see it happening? And what danger would we be in if it happened? And I think that might be a good question to ask at the same time. So that way we could let the general public know that I don't think it's as bad as it seems to be with only one way in, one way out, not to discount that it wouldn't be a good thing. But in due course of having to have these things done, it doesn't happen overnight with the government, as you know. So I think if we could ask if a risk assessment was done or could be done for a reasonable cost, that might be something that would ease the residents a little better as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. And, you know, I agree with you that I know there's a concern of only one way in and one way out, but should we experience some kind of a disaster here, you know, there are emergency planning professionals and officials who work on many contingency plans should something like that happen. And I guess based on my past life, I do have a little bit of knowledge about that. So I do want to assure our residents that even if that evacuation route wasn't in place, should a disaster hit, that there are contingency plans in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It might be an idea as well if we asked our fire chief to come and give a quick talk on that very subject in his opinion. And maybe he could work with the joint emergency on that one and see if maybe the two of you could come up with something in a format for just a small presentation. Because there does seem to be a lot of talk in the village these days about one way in, one way out. And I would really like to sort of ease that down if I can. And I'll leave it at that.
The fire chief does sit on the joint emergency committee, but I'll certainly be in touch with him and speak with him to see if maybe we can come up with a little bit of a presentation. Then thank you.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, councillors. Councillor Facio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I also, reason I'm bringing this up because it was an event for the kids charity, and it was an outstanding evening last Saturday, and kudos to Tourism Harrison and Todd Richard and his performers and all the volunteers. I believe $5,000 was raised from the silent auction and from the entrance fees. It was a great evening, and hopefully many more to come. Councillor Vidal brought up the retirement of former CAO Madeline McDonald. I'd like to express my hope that she enjoys her retirement. I worked with Madeline for nearly 7 years and was an excellent CAO, very approachable lady, and knew her stuff, and worked very diligently with the staff and in the village. And when we had the unfortunate stop of work, they rolled up their sleeves and they were out there cleaning washrooms and picking up garbage to keep the village clean. So good luck to her and her husband in their retirement. I also attended the LGLA, and the motto this year was traditions and tides, leadership in an uncharted frontier. And like the other councillors, we attended some 14 of the different meetings that were on. All very good meetings, a very good group of people, very nice to speak to. I met some of the folks I've known for many years there. It's always nice to see them at these events. And the local government leadership, local government seminar this year is going to be in Harrison Hot Springs in May, which is great. So we look forward to that. At the regional district, one of the main topics that was in the February the 2nd meeting was the FVRD private breach policy. And I believe this is something that, just quickly read this here. In December 2022, the Minister of Citizen Services released a privacy management program direction to all public privacy officers stating effective February the 1st, 23, all public bodies would be required to develop a privacy management program setting out clear and scalable parameters for the components of privacy management program. So I'm assuming that we received the same correspondence on that. We had a presentation on the January the 26th from Claire Seeley, Manager of Tourism, the City of Mission, laid out the tourism for the upcoming years and the Scenic 7, Harrison Mills, all those areas that are now becoming very popular. And it's one of the areas that is now part of the Tourism Harrison, Fraser Valley. At the At the Committee of the Whole on February the 16th, there was the draft financial plan, and for the village of Harrison Hot Springs, it's going to be a difference of $2.17 for the village on an overall assessment. Page 16, what is this one? Page 16. Page 16 was these were increased funding initiatives for the Chilliwack Search and Rescue. They're going to be looking at now the operations cost for a Class D helicopter fixed line. So there was that's going to be an annual cost of $50,000 per annum. That was passed, and of course that helicopter is used by many of our search and rescue teams who do an outstanding job. That was approved, and on the page 20. I should say that the Fraser Valley Regional District had to go through 122 service areas individually, a budget for each one of them. So it's quite and this is just the start of it. The member requisition for servicing area, where are we here? I'm just looking for Harrison Hot Springs. I think we're page 77. Here we go, Harrison Hot Springs. For those who don't know what the regional district does, it's a general administration, grants and aid, indigenous relations, fire dispatch, mosquito control, air quality and management, strategic planning initiatives, building inspections, search and rescue, animal control, transit, regional mapping, and regional parks. And like I said, the overall for 2023, it's a difference of it's $115,000 is the total requisition, and it's an increase of $2.17. That's the end of my report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next item is number 11, reports from the mayor. I have nothing further to add onto that. Moving on, nothing from reports from staff. Next order of business is 13, which is the bylaws. First report is a highway and traffic amendment bylaw, which is to provide 3 readings to the highway and traffic amendment bylaw number 1185/2023. Discussion. Amendments have been introduced in the highway and traffic bylaw to provide provisions for pay parking rate adjustments and expansion of the pay parking program to include Littlewood Avenue west of Hot Springs Road. Accordingly, a draft of the amendment bylaw is attached for consideration. The recommendation is that the highway and traffic amendment bylaw number 1185/2023 be given first, second, and third readings.
So, Mr. Mayor.
Moved by
Seconded.
Councillor Facio, second by Councillor Jackson. Discussion? Ready for the question? I call the question. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Next. Bear with me a second. Next item under the bylaws is item B, which is a report of the community services manager, read the boat launch facility and parking lot regulation amendment bylaw number 1186/2023. The background is the amendments have been introduced in the boat launch facility and parking lot regulation bylaw to harmonize the day parking rate with the parking program day rate. Accordingly, a draft of the amendment bylaw is attached for consideration. The recommendation is that the boat launch facility and parking lot regulation amendment bylaw 1186, 2023 be given first, second, and third reading. Moved by Councillor Vidal, second by Councillor Jackson. Discussion. Councillor Facio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to mention for the members of the public, but may not be aware that a portion of the surcharges collected at the boat launch does go towards our search and rescue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion? Ready to call the question, then all in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Next order of business is 14, which is new business. Councillor Vidal, you had some items.
Yeah, thank you, your mayor. First item I would want to go over is the proposed resolution that will be, if passed tonight, will be sent to Lower Mainland Local Government Association executive for consideration to be forward at the resolutions session of the conference. It's the Independent Ethics Commissioner, and I'll provide a little bit of background. UBC in 2021 endorsed a resolution, Independent Office of Integrity for Local Government, which requested the BC government to establish an independent office of integrity to serve the public, elected officials, and local government officials in an advisory, educational, and investigative role in the development, application, and enforcement of codes of conduct. The UBC Resolutions Committee noted that in their response that the resolution takes a step beyond the current legislation by now seeking a requirement for all local governments to adopt a code of conduct. The Ministry of Municipal Affairs, in its response to this resolution, stated that integrity commissioners can play an important role in providing education and advice respecting responsible conduct and enforcing the code of conduct. At the same time, there are limits to that role. For example, integrity commissioners do not make the decision to impose sanctions on an elected official in breach of a code of conduct. That decision remains with the elected council or board. And further, that local governments are currently able to establish a local integrity commissioner to help guide these processes if they choose to for their community. Well, the village sincerely appreciates the efforts of both the Lower Mainland Local Government Association and UBCM on their work to date in addressing this issue. This resolution specifically points to the inability of smaller communities and boards to shoulder financial costs of an independent third-party investigation. And I would like to read the resolution. Whereas the UBCM Working Group on Responsible Conduct has worked to support British Columbia local governments and boards in addressing misconduct by elected officials and providing local government and board members with a set of fundamental principles which can be utilized to enact codes of conduct. And whereas smaller local governments and boards in British Columbia do not have the financial resources to establish an independent and autonomous ethics commissioner to investigate and resolve allegations of misconduct. And whereas as the current legislative framework available to small local governments and boards in British Columbia regarding alleged breaches of code of conduct can result in expensive legal processes which may produce limited conclusions. Therefore, be it resolved that Lower Mainland LGA and UBCM called on the provincial government to immediately create an independent municipal ethics commissioner within the Ministry of Municipal Affairs to serve the public elected officials and officers in an advisory, instructive, and investigative role in the application and enforcement of codes of conduct. With that, Mr. Mayor, I would like to put a motion on the table to endorse this, have council endorse this resolution and to forward it to Lower Mainland Local Government Association Executive Board with a request that it be included at the resolution session for the conference held in May. Thank you.
I will second that.
Second by Councillor Buckley. Discussion. Any discussion? Ready to call the question? All in favor? Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Council.
Next item, please, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next item is a motion to amend the procedural bylaw to reflect the scheduling of regular in-camera closed meetings. From time to time, it's necessary for council to hold regularly occurring in-camera closed meetings which do not fall under the category of special, open, or closed meetings, as there is no provision in our current procedural bylaw to address regularly occurring in-camera closed meetings. I make the following motion that the Village of Harrison Hot Springs Council Procedural Bylaw 1164 be amended to read and include the following. That regularly occurring in-camera closed meetings to be held on the same day as regular meetings of council and scheduled prior to the commencing of that regular meeting of council as defined in section 3 of the bylaw. Thank you.
You, Councillor Vidal. I just want
I'll
to comment.
second that, Mr. Mayor.
It's just, I haven't asked for a seconder this time. Councillor, excuse me. Councillor Vidal, you call it a regular in-camera meeting. We don't have any regular in-camera meetings. The only regular meetings we have are the meetings that we're doing tonight, which are scheduled. I know there's been a lot of confusion with the council procedural bylaw. I know that as requirement of the charter, that within 6 months of a new council being elected, that the council procedural bylaw has to come to council for review. So we're 4 months into it, so we have 2 months left. So I would suggest is that we look at the council procedural bylaw almost line by line. So if I could suggest is that we refer it to a future or to our next committee of the whole meeting where we can actually discuss it in more detail so that we can get something that actually works for everybody. Councilor Vidal.
Just a little bit of a point of order, Mr. Mayor, if you want to enter into discussion, I think a seconder on the motion is in order, and then we can enter into discussion. Thank you.
I'll second that.
I have not called for a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Buckley.
Sorry.
It is the mayor's decision to decide whether there's that the motion follows the rules of the law. So this is very confusing to the rules of the law. So the question of which I had suggested to you, and is that as the whole procedural bylaw has major issues with it, that it be referred to a committee of the whole meeting so that we can discuss it in more detail. I think it's dangerous to make the motion that's in place now because you're confusing with the word regular meetings with in-camera meetings. So my question is to Councillor Vidal. Do you wish to change your motion to refer your motion to the next committee of the whole meeting for discussion?
With all due respect, Mr. Mayor, no, I'd like the motion to stand tonight. Thank you.
Well, I can't allow it to proceed because it doesn't follow the common law rules of law. So let's move to your next item, please. Order, please. Next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My final item is a request to have a letter forward to inspectors of municipalities.
Did you have more to say, Council?
When the Legislative Assembly first created the Office of the Inspector of Municipalities through legislation in the 1930s, it was a time of municipal bankruptcies. The inspector was provided with authority to hold inquiries into the conduct of municipal business. While that authority does remain in legislation, it is not often used. Director routine oversight by the inspector of municipalities has diminished over time because local governments generally have more resources and experience to draw upon. And there is a more robust system of accountability in place, focusing on accountability. With that, I would like to make the following motion. Recent circumstances regarding the retirement of a key senior staff member and the continued absence of other senior staff members. This has resulted in the inability of elected council members to provide good governance to the village of Harrison Hot Springs. These events have jeopardized the stability, integrity, and the financial security of our community. Therefore, I move that a formal letter be immediately forwarded to the province of British Columbia Inspector of Municipalities, and under that legislative authority, provide assistance to this council in the form of guidance and direction to address our urgent concerns. And that letter also be CC'd to our local MLA, Kelly Patton. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Riddell. I just have I want to just verify that it actually also includes, as I have in front of me here, that it should include section 89 of the charter. And it should refer to 764 of the Local Government Act. Is that your intent, Councillor?
Can you repeat those sections again, Mr. Mayor, please?
Sorry, 764 of the Local Government Act and 89 of the charter.
Seven, 764.
764 and 89 of the charter. Maybe I can just suggest, Councillor, that you just add those two to your friendly amendment, add that to your motion.
According to, yes, I'd be happy to do that, Mr. Mayor, according to section 764 of the Local Government Act
Correct. And 89 of the charter.
and section 89 of the charter.
Correct.
I'll accept that friendly amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a You moved that. Do I have a seconder? Sorry, Counselor Buckley.
Whoever.
Counselor Buckley seconded it. And- Excuse me. Discussion. Further discussion on it. Ready to call the question? All in favor? Passes unanimously. I think you had one more, did you, Counselor Vital?
No, I believe it was just the three items, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Next order of business is questions.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me. We're still on new business.
Yes,
I had somebody bring up a new business.
that wasn't on the, that wasn't brought up there, sir, in the,
No,
under the approval of the agenda.
we put that clause in for new business for that reason, to bring up new business.
Thank you, sir, but that wasn't approved as the approval of the agenda.
But
So we move on. Questions from the public.
this is getting, oh boy, this is gonna.
Questions from the public, please.
Tonight, I have a question for all four counselors, and I would like each one to answer separately. You chose to ignore the Citizens Task Force recommendations for reasonable remuneration for a raise. Instead, you chose to give yourself a 43.1% raise out of your greed. Forget about using the excuse of inflation, the pandemic, or the cost of living, because we're all going through that. We're all suffering with this. So my question to you is, why would you even think you are entitled or even deserve a 43.1% raise other than your greed and lining your pockets with our taxpayers' hard-earned money?
Keep your comments.
There are families and seniors suffering to make their ends meet.
Mr. Mayor.
You are just concerned about how
Mr.
cheap
Mayor,
all of you.
Point of order. Mr. Mayor, point of order.
That's the question when you asking for a 43.1% raise out of my pockets. I am the employer. You should be employee. Ask every one of you to answer it because we all want to know.
You
I
are,
would be happy to answer.
you are out of order.
Then
Counselor-
answer it.
Counselor Buckley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do you know how much we have had for a raise since 2009?
I don't really care.
Thank you.
What I care
Do you know how
about
much?
is you are
I'm answering your
asking
question, so
about
please let me answer your
cutting
question.
into my money for my household because of your greed. I want to know why you think you can justify that.
Next question.
I guess you're too cowardly.
No,
I can't,
there's no answer, Counselor. Counselor, I'm not sure. Counselor,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John Allen, 398 Hot Springs Road. My question is about the escape route, and I want to start by apologizing because I was on the committee when we did a risk assessment as recommended by Mr. Buckley. And I suggested that we use the old logging road through Sasquatch Park to Garnet Creek and Ruby Creek. And over the last 20 years, you have continually rejected my suggestion until eventually you spent a couple of $100,000 on a consultant who said, John Allen was right. That is the viable route. But tonight I want to ask you why you're still flogging that dead horse. And I call it a dead horse because on November the 15th, 2019, I think it was, or 2020, we had a heavy rainfall event in Harrison Hot Springs. We had 10 inches of rain in one day here and 20 inches at Greenpoint. And as a result, there was 4 feet of dirt across the road at the waterfall. There was 8 feet across the road at 6969. The road was completely washed out at the turnoff to Greenpoint. And the 100-foot bridge over Trout Creek was washed downstream and the road was closed for a month. If you were able to get past that point into Sasquatch Park, the very good road that leads right through the park, the old railway grade, that was covered in about 5 feet of material for a distance of about 150 yards. So my point is, things have changed. Given that Rockwell Drive and Trout Lake Creek are no longer a reliable route, I'm withdrawing my endorsement and suggestion for an escape route through Sasquatch Park, because I believe that if we have a major natural disaster such as a flood, an earthquake or whatever, that route is the first route that's going to close in this area. And therefore, we shouldn't be spending money on it. Instead of doing that, let me suggest that we take the money, instead of planning an escape route, let's take the money and deal with the risk. And the biggest risk that we have in this village is an interface fire blowing through the east sector and the west hillside and cremating the rest of the village. So instead of spending money on that, on this escape route to the north, which I no longer endorse, I'd suggest you spend that money on cleaning up the forest, getting rid of the dead wood, and making the road out of Harrison 4 lanes wide, at least to the 7 and 9 junction, so that traffic can go. We know from our Canada Day fireworks event that you cannot get a lot of people out of Harrison in a hurry. And we need to do that, and a 4-lane road is the answer. And we also need to get rid of the bottleneck that is at the golf course, which is easily done by a diversion road under the power line and back through the old Westaway property to Hardy Road and Golf Road. So please stop flogging the dead horse of the northern exit. It's not available because Rockwell Drive is extremely vulnerable to being closed and closed for some time. And my question is, would you please consider doing that? Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Alan Garneau from 641 Schooner. To no one's surprise, I'm sure, I'm going to raise the issue that came up on 2 occasions during the meeting tonight, and that has to do with the committee of the whole meeting. I'm a stickler for proper procedure. Proper procedures have been developed to protect yourselves and the people that you govern, to ensure that what you do is done properly. And it might just happen to avoid some of the things that I've seen. It's kind of sad to start an evening the way it started. We have some healing to do. Now, as far as the committee of the whole, the minutes that you approved tonight dealt with 6 topics. It had 16 motions during that. And not one of those motions had a seconder. Why? Why bother with a seconder? Regular meetings have to have them, and that's one of the protections. If somebody wants to put a motion on the floor, there should be at least someone else that wants to support that. Now, if you want to go into committee of the whole, great. Then you can deal with one motion and it'd be a lot easier. But there is no such animal in proper procedure that justifies the business of a committee of the whole meeting. It just doesn't exist. Now, I don't know, I have just one question tonight. Oh, by the way, this meeting, the minutes that you approved tonight for the 26th and 27th, which was really just one meeting. You elected and then you came back the next day, it was one meeting. There's nothing wrong with what you did in terms of procedure, but it should have been called a special meeting. Your own procedure rules say you can have a special or regular meeting. That's it. Once you're in there, you can go into committee of the whole. But when you do, your table gives them a specific thing to deal with, and then you rise out of that, you report back to the meeting. The committee of the whole cannot approve anything. You can recommend to the council to deal with it. Now, I didn't stand up, I didn't come up here to make a speech, and here I am making a speech, but I'm just saying, look, there's nothing wrong. I would love to know why some of you feel so strongly that you have to be able to do business in committee of the whole. What's the purpose? Is it to slide something by, make it easy? I mean, this raises all kinds of questions in my mind. Why do you find it to be an advantage? In camera meetings, there's no one in camera meeting. There's a special or regular meeting, and then you move into a session, an in-camera session. You don't just call an in-camera meeting. You might give a warning to people that don't know they're to come and watch because this meeting will be in camera. But you started as a regular special meeting and then you move in camera. That's not so hard. Anyway, my one question, I've got a lot of questions, but my one question tonight, how long has this council been using committee of the whole meetings? When did it start?
Well, you've been on council for 25 years. That's how many times that committee of the whole. You may have heard me read out this evening that one of the largest regional districts in the province, the third largest, the Fraser Valley Regional District, you heard me read out that the draft financial plan was in a committee of the whole. It didn't come out of a meeting. It was directly into a committee of the whole. And that's how things are carried out. And have been carried out for many years. It's another way, and I don't like the suggestion that we're hiding things because it's an open public meeting. You can't hide things in an open public meeting. And that it's been an ongoing discussion in this community for many years. It's worked very well with councils when they've been able to discuss many areas which they can't really get into detail in regular council meetings because it's not verbatim council meetings. It's just you receive a report, you may have a brief discussion and you pass it, but committee of the wholes, you get down to the nitty-gritty discussing more areas that need discussing, and then making recommendations that go forward to a regular council meeting, and that goes under the heading of the consent agenda. So if that's an answer for you, sir, that's the answer. There's nothing unusual. It's done in every municipality that I've attended. It carries on in our neighbors to the south, and in Chilliwack, in Mission, in Hope, they all have committees of the whole when they need to.
You know,
But this is a long discussion. I think you had a question, if that's your question.
I just asked how long it had been used, and I'm gonna have to go and listen to the Zoom to get your full answer. I'm sorry, because unless I'm sitting right next to the speaker, I can't make out. With all reference to you, and I appreciate what you're doing.
Because your speaker is on when I'm speaking, that's why.
I don't, anyway. But I do appreciate it. I just think that are you aware, you might have said this, but are you aware of any other jurisdiction that has committee of the whole meetings?
Yes,
Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Several?
Yes, sir. I just reported one this evening from the Fraser Valley Regional District.
Anyway, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I still think that I'd like to see things done properly, and we may agree to disagree, who knows?
Sorry, Alan. Could I just ask you to come back up just for 1 second? Just. I want to thank you.
Excuse me,
Sure.
you sound so clear. If you will give me time to get back to the speaker to hear the answer.
You bet.
I have to go there.
Thank you. Yes.
Sorry, but that's
No, perfect.
the state of the art isn't very good.
I just want to respond to his question here first. I would like to know that you wrote a detailed letter on your discussion here on the committee of the whole and other items, and that was included and accepted under the consent agenda. I thank you for taking the time to do that. I'm a very procedural person. I believe in law. I believe in rules. I believe in following rules. I believe that they must be followed. There's a lot to learn. The council procedural bylaw has a lot of discrepancies within the bylaw. It's my personal opinion, and I think you could hear from other councillors tonight of issues with the council procedural bylaw, and I think it needs to go over line by line item. I think it needs some good detailed discussion in it. This council procedural bylaw has caused a lot of grief, especially for me in the last few months as we interpret things differently. I just again want to thank you, Alan, for taking the time to bring that to our attention. And when we do this review, that information I'm sure will be included in part of that discussion. Thank you.
Geraldine Mayotte, 410 Esplanade Avenue. And my question is with regards to the Joint Emergency Commission evacuation routes. And I'm just asking council if you've considered or will consider the fact that before more money is spent on developing Sasquatch Park, that we explore another possible route. That being because of the events on Rockwell Drive, which are ongoing. I was looking the other day at water pooling again, and also fire, because it might have been in the 70s, that whole hillside was on fire. My husband was in the military, or he was a fiance at the time, firefighting that whole hillside. And that's always been my concern. And that was prior now to today's world, where fire is a huge, huge threat. So in the winter, fall, whenever we get these atmospheric rivers, and they seem to be developing more often, not to the extent of the last one, but we certainly seem to be getting a lot of rainfall events, the extreme weather conditions, and that route is at risk. And then fire, absolutely. So I would ask that before more money is spent from the village on developing a route, to please consider looking at other options and what we can do to improve our safety overall. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Can I answer?
Go ahead.
I just have a few questions for the council
Go ahead.
today.
Go ahead.
One of them, actually a statement also with John Allen, his statement about the emergency route. I agree with them wholeheartedly. And with the lady just previous about Rockwell Drive disappearing when you need it most probably. But I do have a concern about, we see little towns on the East Coast especially, where their emergencies usually come from the train stations, where there's some mistake happening and somebody blows up the whole town. So if we only use the highway for an emergency escape, it would cause us to, if there's an incident in Agassiz, where are we going to go? So there's a roadblock there. Sorry, John. The other question I have is, I don't know if it was the meeting before or after, but John Buckley asked what happened with the money from the skating rink? Have we ever gotten a report on that?
No, we have not. No,
yeah.
Counselor.
Can I answer that quickly? I asked for it to come out in the spring so we could get a season's use out of it. So then we could understand how much it costs to assemble it, take it apart, the maintenance over the winter time, and possibly how many users we actually had. So it's not due until it gets taken apart, I guess, in the spring.
So we're still waiting on.
We're still waiting on that one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. You have to turn that.
Zoltan Kiss. Oh, 531 Echo. I echo Alan's remarks about the regular and special council meetings. Those are the only ones published in the community charter. And my question is, under the current procedural bylaw, do you not have to give notice and publish it in two times in the paper before you make amendments to the procedural bylaw? Is that still in effect?
That is correct.
So Vidal's motion would have been out of order.
That's why it was denied. Out of order.
Very good. So no offense,
Thank you.
just, okay.
Thank
So
you.
the other question,
Yes.
I noticed a lot of reverb. And I'd like to make an experiment. Could you turn a couple of mics on? This mic's on. John,
What is your question, sir?
to resolve this reverberation, I think what happens is you have more than one mic on. You have 2 or 3 on, and you get the reverb, which means a microphone is feeding back into the speaker of the microphone.
Mr. Kiss?
Gives you that
that's-
reverb, and we in the audience can't really hear. Except for Mitchie, she's got a dominant voice, so we can hear her, but the reverb makes it annoying to listen.
Very annoying. Thank you, sir.
May I respond, Mr. Mayor?
Absolutely, sure.
Thank you. Mr. Kiss, first of all, my first name is Mickey, not Mitchie. Thank you. And second, we have had this difficulty with these mics. When we did move here into Memorial Hall due to COVID to allow for more attendance. We will be moving back to council chambers shortly at the village office where once our ability to have Zoom capabilities move back to the hall. That should alleviate the concern I do. Your concern has been raised numerous times, believe me, and we have tried exactly what you have suggested in an attempt to alleviate it. And we've been unable to, but I'll show you when we move back to the village office chambers. It's not going to be a problem. Thank you.
So I just had an experiment.
Thank you.
I turned my microphone on while she was talking. You could hear the reverb.
Yeah.
Go ahead, turn your mic on.
I can hear it up here too. It's very.
So I think the policy should be changed, one microphone on at a time.
As Councillor Vidal just informed you that we're actually moving into the old village office, council chambers, and hopefully the system works good in there. But thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Mr. Mayor, John Allen, 398 Hot Springs Road. I guess this is a question to you. I've listened with great interest to the goings on here tonight. And in fact, some of the goings on in a special meeting this afternoon at 5 o'clock, which was supposed to go in camera, but they refused to pass the resolution. And the police, again, were threatened to be called by Councillor Facio, who wanted the police to come and remove me from an open
Point
meeting.
of order, is there a question
The
here?
question is,
Excuse me, Mr. Yeah, the agenda items.
I'll motion to adjourn, your worship. He's asked,
Mr. Mayor, what is this going to do with the agenda items?
Council, sir, you're gonna have to turn your microphone back on.
Mr. Mayor, it is an agenda item. It was new business. You made a statement. Councillors made statements. What I'm trying to understand is it the intention of these four councillors to remove you from the office of mayor? Is that the intention? Because
Mr. Mayor,
I don't know,
Mr. Mayor, out of order.
what's this vote of new councillors? Where does that come from?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Mayor, point of order,
a motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn, please.
Well, is that your intention? Mayor. Answer the question.
Motion to adjourn, your worship.
Oh, dear.
Do I have any questions from Zoom?
A motion to adjourn, your worship.
Is there any questions?
No.
We haven't done. Is there any questions from the Zoom?
For anyone on Zoom, if you have a question, please use the raise your hand feature. Doesn't look like there's any questions, your worship.
Thank you. Move for adjournment, moved by Councillor Buckley, second by Councillor Bidell. Call the question. All in favor? We are adjourned, passed unanimously. Thank you, everybody, for coming.